So I'm not going to talk about a event which took place, a very important event, took place a couple of days back, uh, telethon, a telemarathon video conferencing, which was initiated by European Commission and in which heads of states of many countries participated. More than 7.4 billion euros or $8 billion have been pledged for finding medicines and vaccines for COVID 19. And of course, this is only an initial amount. This won't be enough. So later they will pledge more. In fact, Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, which is a public-private partnership based in Geneva, is also hosting a conference on June 4th to collect more money for vaccines. Of course, as the New Zealand Prime Minister in the conference put it, the challenge is not only about developing a vaccine, that's a technological hurdle, but also how to ensure that it reaches everybody. As the UN chief Antonio Guterres said, none of us are safe till all of us are safe. It's a global pandemic which has affected every country in the world. So any vaccine which is to be developed has to be there for everybody, for the 7 billion, 700 crore people living in the world. So that is the biggest challenge, how to make it, not to make it available, so the global scale at which the vaccine has to be produced. So obviously it involves more than one pharmaceutical company. It has to be manufactured at different places, and it has to be made affordable also. That is the most important thing there. How to make it affordable for the millions of people, billions of people who can't, who are below the poverty line. Who is going to fund that? Who is going to finance for that? So the good thing about this initiative by European Union is that it is very clear that whatever money they will be spending on development of these vaccines and medicines, it has to be, nobody can patent it. So it has to be given to a WHO recognized body for manufacturing. Nobody can claim intellectual property rights. They have to completely share the technological know-how for medicines or vaccines for this COVID-19 to a WHO body. So it has to be in the public domain. So if some company develops it and claims IPR rights, then they will try to make huge amount of money out of this distress. So it cannot be allowed, because as I said, everybody has to be protected, because even if one person is not, few people are left out, then they will be spreading it. So this is a big logistical issue involved in that. The amount of vaccines, the huge amount, 700 crore vaccines to be developed and to be shipped to different countries, and whether this whether the another technological thing is whether the virus will mutate after the vaccine, whether right now itself there are different strains of COVID-19 vaccine, whether this any new vaccine will take care of all the different strains of the virus. All these things are technological aspects, but I'm merely talking about the logistical and financial issues involved in that. There are enough, as you know, there are around 111 vaccines are right now at different stages of testing, but only 9 of them have come to the human trial stage. And the remaining are preclinical trials. Clinical trials or human trial stage, only 9 of them, and the majority of them are in the preclinical stage. The vaccine development typically takes many years, not many months, many years. There are a lot of procedures involved in that. The most important thing is the efficacy. There are two important issues we should dwell on it here. The efficacy of the vaccine. Efficacy means its ability of the vaccine to generate immune response from the body of the person. If it is not creating it, then it is not effective at all against the disease. But the other important thing is the safety aspect of that. How safe it is, what kind of side effects it could have. That is again has to be tested. So we cannot rush into anything, though we are racing against the time, as the French President Macron put it. But we have to be safety and security are foremost also. So typically a vaccine takes many years to develop because there are procedures for doing that. First, most of the vaccines are use antigen. Antibodies are produced in our body in response to a pathogen. Whereas antigen is that pathogen. Antigens are mostly proteins, conjugated proteins, whether it could be nucleoprotein or lipoprotein or other type of proteins. But it could be chemical also. Yeah, it could be manufactured. Natural antigens are also there, and synthesized in the laboratory. Chemical antigens are also there. So first you have to develop an antigen. Antigen could be a virus itself or other type of pathogens like bacteria or fungus, etc. And that antigen has to create antibody immune response in our body. So we have to first identify, but that has to be safe also, because any overdose could cause the disease itself of the antigen. It will be beyond the capacity of our body to produce antigen, because when you introduce an antigen in our body, it reactivates a memory in our T cells and beta cells in our WH, the white blood corpuscle, WB, or the white blood corpuscles, and reactivating that memory is key. But if the antigen is, that's why many times dead or inactivated viruses are used as antigens to create that immune response in our body. But if it is too strong, like in many cases of polio, oral polio vaccine, where live virus is used, sometimes there's a chances of the child getting polio because of the vaccination. So that is why oral polio is not very safe. For both my children, I insisted in the hospital to give a shot, which is much more safer because it uses a dead virus. So that is very important, the safety aspect of it. But sometimes the immune response will be too low. That is no use at all. The efficacy is affected. Sometimes it could lead to development of autoimmune disorders, which could create much more complications. Allergy reactions could occur. So enormous amount of trials are needed. So first is you have to isolate that antigen in the laboratory, create then tissue culture or cell culture in the laboratory, then go for animal testing, which typically uses mice or monkeys in the laboratory. And then once it is successful, only then you can come to the clinical trials or human trials. Even in clinical trials, there are 3 steps you have to be. Now, of course, the clinical human trials, as I said in one earlier videos, it has been completely randomized. There are control and control group has to be there, where placebo has to be given also. Even doctors should not know about which is control group and which is experimental group. And all those things are there. You have to take care of all that. And there are 3 stages. In each stage, the number of human participants should be increased. And that's why, and then once it is all the 3 stages of human trial are over, then it has to be reviewed by the peer group. Then once it is over, you have to go to the regulatory bodies to get their permission, national regulatory bodies and WHO approved bodies and all that. Once all this process, paperwork, all these are over, only then you can, if you want to patent it, then that process has to be done. Then only it has to go for mass production level. There's a process, there's a procedure for doing that. Of course, we can bypass certain procedures if in terms of global pandemic like this, like the number of human trials can be reduced and all that. But we cannot rush, because as I said, safety is very, very foremost, because any half-baked solution could be more dangerous than the problem itself. So it could cause the now the virus is not that it's not as dangerous, in the sense, because the mortality rates are around 5%. And mostly the old people or people with the immunity compromises are there. So, but if in response to an unsafe vaccine, the virus may mutate and it may become more dangerous. So we have to, not only about the humans who are participating, we have to think about the long-term impact on the virus itself, because the mutation is quite common in response to a defense mechanism. So all these issues are involved in that. So the Gavi, of course, is leading in the front always for vaccines. Gavi is the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. It works with all the poorer countries like India. It is a one which works with Gates Foundation. It works with donor governments. It works with WHO. It works with UNICEF. It works with World Bank. It creates many funding procedures for funding the immunization problems in poor countries like Africa and sub-Saharan African countries, in India, South Asia, in some Latin American countries, Caribbean countries. It works a lot. Of course, there's a lot of criticism about the way it functions. It follows what is known as a Gates approach rather than the Alma-Ata approach. That's a different story altogether. I'm not getting into that at all. Of course, in the coming back to the meeting which took place 2 days back, the teleconference in which the Japan pledged $800 million, Germany pledged $500 million. Every country has pledged according to their capabilities, financial capabilities. There, all the European countries, even countries like Jordan participated, Turkey participated, South Africa participated, even Saudi Arabia, the most barbaric country in the world, Saudi Arabia participated, China participated, though not Xi Jinping, but their ambassador to United Nations participated. China has also pledged $50 million to this initiative. Canada participated, Australia, New Zealand, every country, important country in the world participated and pledged their support for creating a vaccine which should be made affordable to everybody in the world. That is the idea behind that. That is only the initial thing. As we move on, as some clinical trials show some promise, we should find out how we can fund that projects and then mass produce it in all over the world. All these things are then. So I don't think the vaccine is. Where Mr. Trump claims that the vaccine he will be readied by, and America is a very conspicuous absence in this conference. Everybody, in fact, the Norwegian Prime Minister was openly told about the absence of US. It's better that we all stand united. And the US has also stopped funding to WHO because claiming that it supports China and all that. And Mr. Trump, for his own political gains, with more than an eye on the upcoming November elections, US presidential elections, has said a vaccine will be ready by end of this year, and for 300 million vaccines will be ready for US citizens. So that is only 30 crore vaccines only for US citizens. He's not cared a damn about the world. But European countries and Japan and other countries are talking about the welfare of everybody. That is should be that this is a time of crisis, and we should definitely stand united. But the whole global media is talking about the lack of representation from United States. But unfortunately, nobody, and including the media in India, is not talking about the absence of the Indian Prime Minister in this conference. India was the second largest population in the world, and a country which is now third biggest affected country in Asia after China and Iran. Turkey are not including as an Asian country because part of it is also in Europe. And the number of cases in India are increasing every day. Last 2 days, you have seen more than 3,000 cases, and lot of new hotspots are emerging, and we are now opening up the economy, and booze shops are being opened. As I predicted in the previous video, kilometer long queues are also there outside the booze shops. So and many trains are being now sent migrant laborers, and all these things are happening, and is all are very likely to increase the number of infections and create new hotspots. So at this, but unfortunately, India didn't participate. It is a very important initiative. As a token thing, India can definitely give $50 million, $100 million. Is not a major amount of money, but it shows solidarity. That is the most important. That we are behind the global community. We are one. We may be divided by race and divided by nationality, ethnicity, and all those other things, petty politicking, etc. But in terms of any crisis like this, where everybody is affected, we stand together. That is the message we need to send right now. But unfortunately, Indian Prime Minister had other priorities. Indian media has reported that he was talking to his officials about the various around 30 vaccines which are supposed to be developed in India. India developing a vaccine? Must be a joke, I think. It is like it's a very nice Tamil proverb is there. Illada urukku vali solludal. That means that you are telling how to go to a place. You tell the path to it. Beautiful, you turn right. This goes right for 5 kilometers and all. But that place doesn't exist at all, a non-existent place. You cannot do that. So India, with a pathetic level of research infrastructure, with absolutely no climate, no money is being spent, the pathetic stage of government research organizations and the private sector, including the pharma companies, which are global level companies operating from India. So they are, intent on only producing drugs whose patent has expired, and who indulge only in jugaad, which is never a substitute for proper research. And in a country where the Prime Minister goes to the Indian Science Congress and says that Shiva, Mr. Lord Shiva, performed the world's first cosmetic surgery when he put the head of an elephant into the head of Mr. Ganesha. So it is a level of our politicians. We can't expect, there is no mechanism, there is no technological know-how in India to develop a vaccine of such complexity. Of course, whether, as I said, 111 vaccines are at different stages of testing, but as WHO said, we may not ever have a vaccine at all. Nobody knows about it. Like we never have a vaccine for an RNA virus disease like AIDS. Forget about virus-induced diseases, even like TB. We don't have a vaccine for malaria. We don't have a vaccine. So we don't know whether we will be able to develop a vaccine or not, in what time we'll be able to develop it, and how you are going to give it to everybody in the world. There are all questions which remains to be answered. But at least the first start has been done. WHO has already created on April 24th a group for funding for this vaccines. Now taking it further, EU has now created an $8 billion fund. Next month, as I said, Gavi is going to conduct a teleconference again, and which will be sponsored by Britain, and they are going to raise more money for that. So at least things are moving in the right direction. Hope is still there for us. So let us see, but I'm really very surprised, and in fact a bit a tad sad that India is not part of such global initiatives there. We should be leading from the front, being a country which is always there, from the times of non-aligned movement, from the time of fighting imperialism and colonialism in the 50s.